Hey there everyone, this is Kevin Luther. I'm the winemaker and vineyard manager here at Villa Winery. And today we're going to be talking about the Vinobrews. We co-fermented wine and beer together this last harvest, and I want to tell you guys about that. So for the Vinobrew that we make here at Villa Winery, we drew inspiration from a really lot of different sources, but in the end, the way that I got the idea for Vinobrew is, it's not an original concept exactly in any way. It's how wine and beer and alcohol has been being made for millennia. The earliest research into early human anthropological alcohol production is they find clay amphora of weird fermentations of honey and grains and grapes and other fruits, and it appears that the earliest humans were still producing alcohol. You know, from before we had agriculture hardly, we were making alcohol from different wild fruits and honey. And as we got agriculture, we also started having grains that we were cultivating. And they'd mix it together, they'd make some lunch, they'd leave it out for a little while, and it would start fermenting. And so then they had alcohol, and they realized we can make alcohol from just about anything that has a fruit source, a sugar source. Whether that's, natural sugars from fruit or sugars from grain that are cooked and those sugars are converted and released. So the natural yeast in the atmosphere will ferment any source of sugar into alcohol. So this basic innate fact of reality is something that was sort of forgotten over the millennia. As humans, the Greeks and the Romans developed more modern and developed technological ways of fermenting, we realized, okay, we can isolate just grapes and make wine, age it in clay pots, in oak barrels, and create complexities of flavors. Or beer, we can isolate certain kinds of grains that have different flavor profiles. And we can isolate yeast and direct the fermentation in a way to create a flavor profile we want. Maybe mix in some spices to create wit beers. And you have all these different approaches to making wine, to making beer from different sugar sources that we've developed over the millennia, and we've sort of focused them into beer or cider or wine. But that's not the natural way of fermenting. That's the modern way that's developed from this original idea of mixing things and trying to create some interesting complexity of flavor, or just whatever was around naturally in some area, some region. So recently this was rediscovered through archaeological findings through Dr. Patrick McGovern, is a researcher in the archaeology of alcohol. Really interesting research, check him out. And he's inspired a lot of brewers and winemakers to start experimenting with this. This is a new emerging trend in the brewing industry primarily. And people have tried some different things, mixing honey with beer and a little bit of grape with beer, but mostly it's been pretty limited. And a lot of it has involved fermenting with the yeast that are developed for beer on wine, or vice versa, and aging beer in wine barrels. There hasn't been a lot of experimentation into co-fermentations, which is really where this all started back in ancient times. So what we did is we said, let's look at that earliest source of this concept. And it's something that I've been thinking about for a long time since I was in college studying wine at UC Davis. We were talking about the purity of wine, all these European, French wine laws. You have to have a specific yield of grapes that are dictated by the government. You can only grow certain grapes. It's so restricted. And I threw out there amongst my classmates, well, what if we threw some beer and wine together and fermented out? And everyone looked at me like I was absolutely crazy, like that's blasphemous. You don't do that with wine. Wine is about purity and tradition. And to me, that's just boring. I'm sick of wine being boring and traditionalist. I thought, let's do something new, let's do something innovative. And honestly, new and innovative is kind of a funny way to phrase it, since this is the first way alcohol was made. So it's in some ways a return to a tradition that's been long forgotten. So this has been, building in my mind over the last decade. And here at Wise Villa, we were talking about this one day, about St. Patrick's Day and Beer Week coming up in the region. And I threw out that it would be interesting to have a beer on tap, but we don't make beer. What if we did a wine-beer hybrid? I've been thinking about this for a long time. Maybe we could try it out. And Dr. Grover Lee, the owner here at Villa Winery, to my surprise, was totally gung-ho about it. Said, absolutely, let's do that. Got really excited. We started the development. We thought, who can we collaborate on this? Because, well, we're not a brewery. That's not our core strength. That's not something we do. So we reached out to our friends down the street here, Goat House Brewing. Michael and Kathy over there are awesome people, and Michael is an amazing brewer. He does a great job over there. Very innovative and out-of-the-box approach to brewing. Very reflective of our approach to winemaking being innovative. A lot of firsts. The first handcrafted cider in the region, the first sparkling wine in the region. So they're doing a thing that's the first, where they source a lot of their ingredients from their own farm. They grow their own hops. They source a lot of local vegetables and fruits that they do in interesting co-fermentations. They do pepper fermentation and some fruit fermentations. So we thought, what a perfect partner for this project. Reached out to Michael. Michael and I have got along really well over the years, and so invited him over, and he brought over their whole selection of beers, and we had his 10 beers laid out on the table, and I had about 50 different barrel samples laid out. And we just took these beers, took these wines, and started mixing a little bit of this with a little bit of that. And I had a couple different ideas. I thought, something light on the beer side with something fruity on the wine side could go well together. And on the flip side, maybe something really heavy on the beer side, a stout or a porter, with something really heavy on the wine side, a dark red wine or a port could go well together. So we had some ideas, but in the end, it was all about sitting there, joining a few creative minds. Kathy joined us that day as well. Grover ended up joining later. And we tried all these mixes and figured out what flavor balance works the best. Just as with wine and food pairing, you can have some concept on paper, but once you start mixing food and wine or food and beer, it's shocking sometimes the things that go together and the flavors that match nicely. So when we're blending there, we come up with 20 different things that work pretty well, but a few that really nailed it for us. And we came out with our first Vinobrews, which were blends of finished products, basically. We had beer ready to bottle, wine and barrel basically ready to bottle, and we mixed them together, and then we finished the process together. So those were our earliest Vinobrews. But the real thing we were looking forward to was this next harvest. When the grapes ripened on the vine, the grapes were ready to go, they had hops in their field, getting ready to harvest as well, and everything, the timing was perfect. And so as we went into harvest, we brought in different grapes, some Muscat, some Chardonnay, some Syrah, some Sangiovese, and we used a base beer, which was a Saison, a fresher style Saison, sort of a lighter pale ale type flavor profile, but in the traditional Saison techniques. And we co-fermented that Saison wort, the unfermented beer, and we fermented that with the juice, the skins, and the mixed juice and skins of these different grape varieties. And we had about 40 buckets, 5-gallon buckets, fermenting in these little trial lots. And once it was all done, almost like a home brewer, we took those and we bottled them up individually in champagne bottles. And we let the secondary fermentation, which is what creates the bubbles in beer or a traditional sparkling wine, we let it do the secondary fermentation in these champagne bottles, and we had these 40 different versions of co-fermented Vinobrews. That was a very good day, tasting through those. So all of this small batch experimentation and trials we did as a collaboration between Wise Villa and Goat House at the Goat House facility. And one of our interns from Italy, Francesco, did the day-to-day monitoring of this process. He joined us due to his great interest in this process, which is flourishing in Italy as well. It's a sort of a rising trend there as well. So we tasted through these 40 versions, and we found the few best that we thought were our absolute favorites. And the winners in the end were Muscat, co-fermented with the Saison, and that was the skins and juice of the Muscat grape, co-fermented with the Saison. And then we also had the Sangiovese, co-fermented with the Saison. And in varying amounts, we can't let everyone know our secret recipe, but that's the basic gist of it. And those both turned out so good that we did a bigger batch of those. And so now we're serving both versions of this co-fermented Vinobrew on tap here at Wise Villa Winery and down the road at Goat House Brewing. And we have those on tap and also available by the growler and other container sizes. And we're really excited too because our third major version of the Vinobrew that has really caught a lot of attention, that's been on Good Day Sacramento, and it's going to be on How It's Made on the Discovery Channel internationally in like 100 countries, is our really insane collaboration, which is, we're calling it Morning, Noon, and Night. It's a co-blend, it's not a co-fermentation, but it's a blend of the beer is a stout, darker beer style. We have our port, which is a dark red wine that's had brandy added to stop the fermentation, and we have a little bit of residual sugar and a very dark fruit, dark chocolate flavor profile. And then a little bit of cold brew coffee from Rogers Family Coffee down the road. And these three small local businesses came together, brought our products together in this unified beverage that's beer, wine, and coffee, and a touch of brandy in there because of the port. And the flavor profile on that is just so rich. Dark fruit, dark chocolate, these beautiful dark toasted grains, and then just a nice touch of a little bit of cold brew coffee, aromatics, and flavor on there. Morning, noon, and night, because you can drink it any time of day. Really great flavor balance. That was filmed on How It's Made, the whole production process. So you can learn more about it, that I'm not going into the technical details here, but they go really nicely into those details on the show. That will be airing coming up this summer. So that's the story and the history of Vinobrews here at Wise Villa Winery, in collaboration with Goat House Brewing and now Rogers Family Coffee down the road. And come by Wise Villa Winery, check out the Vinobrews here as well as the Goat House. And soon we'll be having some in bottles as well available for purchase with the whole How It's Made thing coming up. We're going to do a small production release of those in champagne bottles, wax tops. It's going to be beautiful. Hope to see you soon.